artists, creatives, designers, welcome to DreamAloud Art. If you're just browsing around and coming through, do us a favor, follow us at DreamAloud Art, and go to the link in my bio so you can see these full artist interviews, okay? Do the whole deal, like, share, subscribe, share with a friend, and thank you for joining us. And today we have an amazing guest, Mike Tony Design. Yay! Okay. All right. So I'm genuinely excited. I don't know if you have seen that or noticed that at this point, but
I felt the energy.
When I see everyone's, artwork, I get a lot of great energy from it. So I'm really pumped up. And viewers, I have no idea. I honestly do not know how I came across Mike Tony Design, but I'm so glad that I did. So Mike Tony, tell me, okay, if I'm someone who has absolutely no knowledge about what you do, what do you do and what are you most passionate about?
I'd say I'm an illustrator, designer. I design by trade. That's like my profession during the day. I work for a digital ad tech agency where I supervise a small team of creatives, making high-level creatives for places like Microsoft, Samsung, a lot of B2B big businesses and stuff like that.
Yes.
Outside of that is I'm an illustrator. Grew up loving anime as a very young kid, watching anime where I could. And it's become one of my favorite, kind of creative mediums. Okay. And, I took a break from drawing for a long time. I got back into it. And the more I started to draw, the more I started to see that a lot of people of color, we weren't really drawing people that look like us. And I was doing the same thing. I wasn't really drawing anybody that looked like me. And I remember a long time ago, my dad asking me that question, and, I didn't really have an answer for him. Because, as we know, what we see is kind of what we imitate sometimes. And so, so it took me a little while, but in 2016, I decided that I was only going to draw people of color in anime. And that was no slight to anime. I love anime. I started to get ground in it. And I just wanted to add that perspective in the medium. And then I want to say in maybe 2017 or maybe 2018, I decided that I didn't want to keep drawing people of color in anime and using, Japanese names and clothes and weapons and stuff like that. Not that there was a big issue with that, but I found that as someone who I would say I'm a self-proclaimed historian, I'm looking into a lot of different cultures all the time, and I'm realizing how rich and amazing that, African culture was, the African diaspora, kind of all over the world. So I just decided that instead of just doing black people with katanas, that I would do some of our native weapons and sabers and certain things of our time, from the continent. And so that was a really long way to say I draw people of color in anime, but that's, if you were going to ask me what I do, that's kind of what I do and why I do it.
Okay. All right. Which I love that breakdown. Okay. I really do. Because first of all, I really encourage artists to be able to speak on their work, maybe not necessarily getting in front of 1,000 people and doing it, but at least being able to have a conversation about what they do. So I think that was fantastic. So you said a few things that just kind of lit me up. I want to go back to the question that you said your father posed for you, and what has that been like, and whether it is your father or someone else, but what has that journey been like as far as support is concerned? And, that might be an area that a lot of artists in general, and we'll say artists of color, have issues with. But what has that been like for you, having support?
Of course, there's a lot of people who are there that want to see it, right? I have a lot of people, obviously, with 60,000 followers, there's a good traction amount of people that want to see what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
But, there are people who, they don't quite get it, right? Because they feel like what I'm doing is, I'm trying to be someone who's confrontational, about the subject, and it's not really the case. A lot of the times I've gotten people write me a message like, hey, what you're doing is actually racist, right? By only drawing black people. And I'm not a person who is a fire back in a negative way. So I have conversations with people. Sometimes people DM me because they know it's probably not appropriate for them to say, on my actual page.
Commenting, right? Sure.
Yeah, so they'll DM me and have comments about it, and I have civil conversations with them. And to be honest, a lot of the times I'm able to turn people to see what I'm saying.
Okay.
So, like with a comment like that, I'll say, well, the whole point of me doing that is like, you would never say that to another artist like Jorge Jimenez or, any other really great artist that's out there that's drawing people who, even though he's Latino, like he's white Latino, he passes for white. There are people who are white that they don't get those questions, right? Right. So we're expected, for us, it's expected that if we want to see people that look like us, that we draw people that look like us, right? And so, you don't see them getting those questions, but I get the questions, that's kind of like, why don't I draw other people? Right. And it's because I spent so many years doing it, and that there are people already doing that. What I'm seeing is there's a lack of people particularly doing what I'm doing. And with, I would say, the level of care that I'm trying to take when I'm drawing people of color. Now, you can find people of color in certain mediums, but it's just like, sometimes you find that there are no people of color behind the camera, behind the medium, creating it. So then the perspective sometimes is a little bit skewed, or it's a little bit different, which is also an issue. And so with that being said, like, I do have a good level of support, but there are a lot of people who, need to be educated on why it's important that, we're able to, show other people and other cultures in a particular light. Earlier this week, you had the little girl looking at herself while her mom's doing her hair, and she calls herself ugly. Right? And now, you look at all these shows, and there's not a lot of people who are dark brown like her, like who are dark brown. They always stick between, I think there's a color code that they use all the time for black people of color. It's like an E something color, or whatever it is. And it's like, it never goes below a particular shade. And, so.
Where? What do you mean this color code? What exactly is that?
Like a hex code, like an actual color code. Like if you work in design, you have a hex code, like, for example.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like that. You see what I'm saying? So like a particular code, like a lot of the people of color will look like a very particular shade. And that was the reason, that was kind of how Iku came up. Like one of my characters I draw a lot is Iku, and he's very dark. He's like purple black, right? And I created him because I was like, you don't see people this dark, right, on camera in that particular medium. And
is this what you're...
yeah, that's him. But there's another picture of him like kind of training, and it was like shirts off, his nose bleeding, but he's a very dark character, and I try to have a spectrum of different colors, you know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
But yeah, like that to me was very important, because people, you being able to see yourself in a particular medium gives you a certain, kind of pride, especially for children.
It's a strong effect that can come from that.
Yeah, it may dictate what they feel like.
To see yourself in that, it's like a mirror.
It might dictate what they feel like they can do. Yes, right? Because if they see more black people being doctors, they may say, damn, I want to be a doctor. Or they see more women on screen as doctors, then a girl is going to be like, oh, I can be a doctor. Right. But if she only sees men being doctors or firefighters or police officers, she's going to exclude herself, because she's like, oh, I don't necessarily belong there. I belong in this other place. And so me doing that with cartoons is a very small way, hopefully, for people to be able to, you know what I mean, like kind of go and see what I'm doing, and to, ultimately find a sense of pride, and not entitlement, but a sense of just, deeper self.
What you're doing is very powerful, and I think that a lot of people, and that's part of this platform of what we're doing here with RTA, Respect the Artist, with, DreamAloud Art, is shedding some light on the power of being an artist, because there are movements that are behind, different artists and different art styles, and other messages behind what we do as artists, as creators, as designers, for sure. So, so you have a very strong energy behind yourself, and then into your work, and it's reflected. And I think that's where people are drawn and magnetized to your work, to your page. I'm a strong believer that whomever is supposed to follow, you know, outside of the
Yeah.
IG way of using it. But I guess I can say, including IG, whoever's meant to follow will follow. Whoever's meant to see and support what you do will be there. Yeah.
You know what's like is also is something that I thoroughly appreciate is like I do have like white followers who are very active, right,
Right.
on my page. And you know, the reason, and I sometimes give them shout outs and stuff like that, and the reason for that is it's important for other people from other cultures to see us in mediums, because then they respect the fact that we give something to the culture, right?
Okay.
So if you can see Black people in different lights contributing to the culture, it's a lot harder to pull up on a 12-year-old kid and shoot him in less than 3 seconds, because there's a certain level of humanity and value that's there.
Okay.
So if everything around you, right, is telling you in different forms of mediums that we're dangerous and that we're this and that we're that, even though the medium itself is fictional, people still kind of, a part of it is taken with them. They still kind of believe it.
Yeah.
So like we can all watch The Exorcist and be like, that's not real, and go home and still sleep with the lights on.
Right.
You see, even though it's a fake thing, it still affects you in that kind of way. So when I'm doing and drawing people in a particular way, in a particular light, and doing certain things, it starts to open up people's minds, not just Black people being able to see themselves and say, this is how we are, but for everybody else to see Black people and say, oh, there's a spectrum of Blackness. There's a this, and that. There's a, you know, and they start to appreciate us as being part of humanity and part of, you know, the human culture, I would say. But it takes a lot of weight of putting a lot of Black people in the forefront, from my perspective, to balance out, you know, a lot of that.
True enough. And to add on to what you just said, yeah, I think that it's an effort that's clearly worth it to put that work in, because it can go far, you know, and I think that you're definitely doing that right now. So yeah, much respect. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Tony, I like this. I like this. I mean, it's fuel. You know, it's fuel for you to keep going and doing what you do. And for me, definitely, I'm pumped. Well, like, I'm wired up. So with that being said, I want to look at your page here. And if you will expand a bit on this art book, Black Anime. Yes. Please tell us about that. I'm gonna just hold it up so people can just see what I'm talking about. So go ahead.
Oh, yeah, actually, obviously, I got books in my house. So I mean, this is the book.
You hold it up. Yes.
This is the hardcover. This is the hardcover. This is the soft cover. So for people who bought both books, I wanted to make sure that they had, you know, two different experiences and stuff like that. So Black Anime, Lost Children of the Diaspora is just kind of a culmination of my work from 2016, 2018. I had a good friend of mine, Jordan Martins. He was my editor for it.
Right there.
Yep, that's him right there. He was my editor for it. And yeah, so, you know, it was a reactionary thing, right? Because I wanted to produce something that year, but I actually wanted to work with a lot of other artists, right? So I had 3 other artists that I wanted to work with. I wanted it to be a 200-page art book, and I felt like with the impact between all of us that we would make a bigger footprint. But, you know, like kind of life got in the way and stuff like that with a lot of the other creators, and I was like, look, I want to make this thing and I want to kind of showcase it, but it needed to be more, right? It needed to be something that wasn't just pictures, right? And I started, as I'm looking at my work, I started to realize that people kept asking me about the stories. And so it's a little bit more than an art book. It's more of an anthology, which is like, you know, a book that has a lot of small stories that are kind of in it.
Right.
And I wanted to expand upon some of the images. So in the book, like, you do have the images that are there, but you have, in some cases, a small description of what the inspiration was for the character, where it kind of came from. And then in other places, you have more like story breakdowns of the book, as far as, you know, like a little bit more of what I'm going to do with the book in the future.
Okay.
So, and to give a little bit more context to that, is the book is broken up into about 3 or 4 sections. So it has original characters in the front section. which is most of the book. And in the original character section, it's all the explanations for some of these characters and where they may particularly come from. Some of the writing comes from my research I've done on the actual African continent and then the African diaspora. So that would include like South America. That would include certain parts of Asia where there are Black people. And, you know, then obviously like, you know, some of the main, let's say, ancient kingdoms of Africa, or certain words that come from, you know, certain cultures, and expanding upon that. And then there's a section that is called Future Stories, where people who've been following me for a long time has had an opportunity of seeing some of the same characters over and over again, and then me also building upon them and adding a bunch of different stuff. So people are always asking me, man, I want to read more about this.
Right.
So I actually give a synopsis of the whole universe and say, okay, this is where this may particularly come from. And then when you read that section, you get an idea of what may come in the future when I break this down as a potential story.
Right.
I have a fan art section where I've done, you know, fan art pieces in my way. I don't like to take characters and just turn them Black per se.
Okay.
And in some cases, I like to like expand on the universe as far as like adding a Black person to the universe.
Okay.
Right. For example, like
behind it, which is really important. Research behind it. I just got to get my plugs.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
My language here. So go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Like Demon Slayer. Instead of just like creating a Demon Slayer and making him Black, it was like, okay, there's a Black delegate family, and they're going on political business to Japan. So while they're there, their family is slain, and then the Demon Slayer who kills that demon and saves the boy, Adibiye, he ends up becoming a Demon Slayer. And so that's how you have like a Black person who's a part of the Demon Slayer Corp, not just for whatever. So I try to have those things. And then the last section of the book is a keep drawing section. And in that section, it's basically, it shows work that I've done from 2016, and I read it over in 2018. And I was a bunch of time frames where some of them are only a month apart, but it's to show the idea of if you keep drawing and practicing, even the difference between a week of you drawing every day is big.
I'm telling you.
And,
all right, go ahead.
And so that's the part. Well, that's
on a roll. I'm like,
that's the whole breakdown of the book. So it was meant to be more than just art. It was meant to be something that was supposed to be uplifting. It was meant to be something that gives you more of an insight into why. There's a section about me, like the author, and like why this book was even important to me, why I even decided to make it. And the title of the book is, there was a poem, and it sucks, I can't even remember the full poem, but just this one phrase like caught me, and was lost children of the diaspora. And I love that, like, you know, as us being kind of lost, because a lot of the places we touched down on, we were deculturalized. So in a lot of ways we are lost. So I was like, man, if you can find a bit of yourself in this book, that was important to me.
Yes, most definitely. I love that. I really do. And you see, I have a notebook now, because I need to jot that down, because I need to get my copy. So let me jot.
I'll show it again, actually.
So where can I get this? Folks are
if you
oh, this sounds interesting. Where can I get this book?
Well, if you go in my it's links in my bio for all my social media. So if you go to the link in the bio, you'll be able to get the book, hardcover and softcover.
Beautiful.
I ship priority, so you get it pretty quickly.
Hey, I'm all about that. Yes, wonderful feedback. Thank you so much, Mike Tony. We are going to jump into some Q&A, because it looks like we have 5 questions that have been posed here from our viewers. So just a heads up, sometimes people will send an emoji like a smiley or a hello. So, but let's see how many of those are some questions, and we'll go with that. Okay, first one. We're gonna put that one on the screen. What is your all-time favorite anime?
Yu Yu Hakusho is up there, and I would say it's between Hunter x Hunter and Yu Yu Hakusho. Yoshihiro Togashi is one of my favorite creators.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Respect.
Hands down.
Okay. Nice. Let's see what else we have here. Okay. This one. Here's the next question. If you were an animal, what would you be and why?
Um,
All right, y'all, don't spoil it. I got some fun questions for him too. That was real close to one of mine. But go ahead. What you got, Mike? Tony?
it's probably I'd probably be like a my one of my favorite animals is like the peregrine falcon. It
Oh, why? Okay.
flies. I think it flies upwards of like 200 miles per hour or something like that. And
Oh,
yeah, and
goodness.
it can
What is a
literally like
falcon? What kind of falcon?
the peregrine falcon.
Mike Tony is so different.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. I
yeah,
was like, a who? A what?
yeah.
All
No,
right, so
it's
why? Why this kind of falcon? Why?
it flies up to like 200 miles per hour. It literally can like I think it can like pick up a small deer. Like it's a very powerful bird.
Oh
And
my
I think like
gosh. What?
like flying. I mean, there's a level of like there's two sets of animals that are like really free, right? There's like
Mm.
birds,
Ooh, hold
like
on,
predator
hold on.
birds.
Two sets of animals that are really free. Expand, please.
Sorry, well I'm just
Come
saying
on.
like so
Oh,
there's like
I'm all ears. Go ahead. So,
there's like
okay.
predator birds, right? So if you're a bird, right, and you're flying and you're a predator bird, like a peregrine falcon, it's like you that level of freedom of away from fear, right, is like a
Right.
whole different kind of concept. And
Mm.
then I would say like, kind of like I think they're called like prairie predators or like flatland predators. So you like lions, right? Like a
Okay.
lion is free because it can fear no one. You know what I'm saying? Outside of
Gotcha.
man, I would say. So like outside of that, like it can walk the way it wants to walk. It can roam the way it wants to roam. It can be as it wants to be because it has no natural predators per se, right?
Yes.
And that's how I feel like
Literally.
with a bird, and like outside of being able to fly, you know what I mean? Like it has almost absolute freedom. So
My
yeah,
gosh. Okay.
yeah.
I like that answer. I think you have checked that box most definitely. Okay. I think you identify. Yeah, I think that was a good selection. I would say it's matching for you. All right. So that's just a couple of questions from our viewers. So now we're going to go into some reverse role here. So do you have any questions for me? I will let you be the
Um,
viewer for a
yeah.
moment.
So what struck you to kind of start this? I'm sure you get that a lot, but
I do.
like where were you when you were like, I'm about to do this thing?
Okay, so where I was, I can't exactly remember, but I will say the thought that had crossed my mind was, of course, I repost. I love reposting. I love, reposting artists' work, period. And then I was doing these, just the quick videos on the story, right? A little here,
Yeah.
a little there, and things like that. And we're gaining some traction on my page, and people were starting to engage a lot more. So then I decided to randomly do a live, just one live, and I was like, oh, how about I just fidget with this thing for a little bit? So I got on, and then some artists are coming on, and of course I'm giving them shout outs, and I'm showing different their different pages. And then Mr. Robot Geek is his username. It was the very first interview that I did, but when I did that live, he called in and joined, right? And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
And we started talking art and everything. It was totally unexpected. And that stayed on my mind. I was like, what? I love this, like making art a conversation, just, oh man. And then from that point, I was like, oh my God, maybe I should do an interview or two. And just been continuous with that and growing from that. So I love it. I love it. And as far as, where it came from or why I'm moving forward, it's really just a strong calling, Mike Tony. It really
Yeah.
is. I mean, it's unshakable. Sometimes I'm just like, I call it the heart space. So it's like the heart space, the passion is overriding my conscious brain. Okay. So it's like,
Yeah.
just, you need to just do this right now. That's all. Like the heart space is just like, mine, shut up. Okay. You need to just go ahead and do this. And I got to tell you, it's creating such a stir, and I'm so excited about it. Yeah.
So and I'm sorry, I'll probably only get one question, but I'm gonna ask a second one anyway.
That's
Where do you see it going? Like, what's your expectation, right, for these art conversations?
My expectation for the conversations, I'm just going to answer kind of what I think you're asking. But what I think the greatest scenario that I can think of for DreamAloud Art, for RTA, which stands for Respect the Artist, is to be one of the strongest platforms for artists. So when, you know, they have that exposure, no matter where they're at in their career, it helps them. You know, that's the one thing, like I've gotten some offers for some things, you know, to endorse some things. And yeah, I know. Yeah. And this has been like, wow. But then I really when I put the artist first, and I'm like, is this in line with what we stand for, which is supporting the artist and not me? And I have to ask that question. So I've declined quite a few things because, you know, I gotta stand firm in what I stand for. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. I mean, like, when those propositions start coming, right? I mean, you really just kind of got to check, like, okay, what, where you kind of want to go with it. So I firmly respect that.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I do something real quick?
Not at all, because you are the Mike Tony, so do what you want.
Thank you. I want to answer one question that I actually saw come up, and someone asked me. Yes, someone said, what are my steps on researching African mythology? So, I mean, first and foremost,
that was on my mind when you were talking about their weapons, I believe. But go ahead, expand.
So, like, ultimately weapons and cultures. I mean, what you can do is you can look up. So there's a lot of different steps, in my opinion, right? So you want to learn about Africa. You got to understand that Africa itself is a continent, and there's a ton of different countries within that particular continent, right? Yeah. You can look up histories of particular countries or continents. Some of the main ones that you hear about are probably going to be the easiest, right? So if you research South Africa, or you research West Africa, certain parts of West Africa, so like Nigeria or Ghana, Jesus Christmas, I'm having a brain fart. Or like like Ethiopia and stuff like that. You'll start to see like some of their stories come up. And what you want to do is start dig deeper into those particular stories. So you might hear about the Igbo people, and then start looking up things about Igbo people. Look up Igbo religion. Look up whatever, and then you might start to see that, okay, bam, that whole part of West Africa, came from a bigger empire that was split into several different smaller countries. That's why a lot of these people practice this particular religion, right? And then when you learn a little bit more about that religion before Christianity or Islam kind of came into the play, you'll start to see when these things come up, you'll start to see kind of a little bit more of their ancient histories and stuff like that. Some of the places I like to use for some of the history, like some of the research that I like to look up is like, Home Team History. He's a dude on YouTube. The one thing I like about him is he actually has his sources. So you can go back using his sources and finding academic research through his thing. There is a academic historian who does these lectures. I think his name's Tony Browder. And he actually has traveled to Egypt and has done his own excavations there, him and his daughter actually, and so he can speak directly to it. He's also, he's a black man, I appreciate the fact that he actually has field research and he brings his photos with his field research, and I believe him and his daughter were the first to discover a particular tomb. I can't think of the name right now. Taharka keeps coming in my head, but I don't believe it was King Taharka. I think it was like, one of the high priests or something like that from his particular dynasty. But yeah, I mean, just try to find places where you can go back and find academic sources, and some of those sources will send you back to just PDF scans of books. And you can read these PDF scans, of books. If you do it through Chrome, I think some of these PDF scans, they can scan the words and transcribe it for you. Right. I know I can do that via my Google Lens on my phone now, which is like really great for me. But, and then once you start to realize and you start researching some of these cities and like the ancient cultures, you'll start to see where some of those things have spread to, like, let's say South America, and you have, Santeria, which is, directly derived from the Yoruban religion, that's where you get some of their deities and stuff like that. There's a lot of mixing that's in there, but we have a rich culture. We have a rich history that expands to so many different parts, of the world. It's just, literally going into Google and typing certain things and then just kind of tracking certain stuff down. So,
and that's deep. When it comes to research and things like that, and I've heard this for probably the past 3 interviews, is the amount of research that you have been putting into your work, the interviewee has been putting into. So I really respect that, because I wouldn't have, I'm familiar with a lot of different forms of media. Like, my hands have been on a lot of different things, but I rarely have had that discussion about the research that people put into their work. So I think that's
exciting.
It's awesome.
But it
shows too. It shows in such an amazing way, and it just, yeah.
If you're a Black person, I think and you're having a really shitty day, right? Because being Black has been rough on you that day, as some days we have where you just do something and you're just like, man, being Black is just tiring. Trying to do this kind of research or whatever, I guarantee you will uplift you, because even though we might not know where we come from directly as a part of the diaspora, there are things that we never get to see or hear about ourselves or understand that we have ever.
Right.
I was talking to someone, I had a different interview, I think it was with the Holly Weirdos, and I was just saying, like, if I said name a Greek god, name a Norse god, and going to name, like, let's say a Mexican god or something like that, like, most people would be able to name at least one.
Exactly.
And if I came up to anybody was like, name one African god, most people won't even be able to name one, but most Black people won't. If I was like, name me one god from the continent of Africa with all the different countries, just name me one.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, with the American gods, I mean, hopefully most people can name Anansi, but like, we would hope. But if you're not into stuff like that, then how would you, how would you know?
Yeah, you're not gonna know for sure. All right, yeah, thank you so much for that response. I'm glad, because I could be on this live for a lot longer, but I'm like, I have like so many more questions. But we are going to round it out with it's either a word game or a Q&A that's really questions for kicks. Kind of like the one that you just answered about the, if you were an animal, then what animal would you be? But I have created a few new questions, and I have some up my sleeve here. So let me see. All right, first question. Mr. Mike Tony, if you were stuck on an island with 2 people, who would they be and why? Stuck on an island with 2 people, because you're trying to survive out here in these streets. So, who would they be?
It'd be Bear Grylls and Les Stroud.
Okay, which is who?
Bear Grylls is the survival specialist that everybody knows. He's out there like skinning sheep and living all over the crap. And I'm a practical dude, man. I'm a practical dude. If I gotta live, man, I want to have somebody that I can. And I'm trying to live. So and Les Stroud he does Survivor Man, and he's done actually a bunch of Survivor Mans on islands. Yeah. So
okay, wait. So him, and then who else?
It's Bear Grylls. Bear Grylls is the other dude. Oh, he's like the Marine killer. Yeah, he's like the Marine. He's like the British Marine or whatever, and he like does all these crazy outings or whatnot. Like if you're like, I could bring anybody. I'm trying to live. It's like,
You're like, I'm a practical dude. I mean,
yeah. It's funny. Most people, for me, they're like, I'm in a lot of people's zombie horde group. Like if they're like, a zombie horde comes on, I don't want to get Mike in the group. It's like, because I'm going to think practically. You know what I mean? Like it's off the rip,
Okay, wait, let me squeeze this in. Are you a gamer?
I am.
You are. What do you play?
Right now I'm playing The Division. I just finished Red Dead. I'm like in the last bit of Red Dead. It was a slow game, but my niece wanted me to play it, so I was like, all right, cool,
Okay.
I'll play it. But
right. All
But
right.
yeah, so I
That was my plug. I was just curious because I've just started really getting into the Switch, so
oh, okay.
that's my safe haven. I'm like, oh,
What are
but
you
I only
playing on the
play.
Switch?
What am I playing?
Yeah.
Yoshi's Crafted World.
Okay. Yeah.
I like relaxing games, like I like relaxing and just put little puzzles together and
Yeah.
whatnot. So yeah, that's my thing. So all right,
I'm
yeah, I would just go ahead.
I'm
What?
more of a narrative driven story player. Like
Oh, you are.
yeah, like I love Last of Us. I love anything that has a really good story. So
Did I see something about Final Fantasy on your page? No, not so much.
yeah, yeah, I did a fan art thing for Barrett for Final
That's
Fantasy.
what it was. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's what it was.
It's Final Fantasy VII is probably one up there as one of my all time favorite games.
Okay,
Yeah.
all
So
right. Oh snap.
yeah, I'm
Okay,
waiting for it when it
so
comes out.
all right, you'll be ready.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll ask. Let me see if I can get one more question because I like your feedback. So you're not one of those quick 1-2 answers. So let's see. The Obamas. The Obamas invite you to their house and they'd like for you to bring a dish because this is a very relaxed setting, okay? Like a cookout, very
Yeah.
casual. So what would Mike Tony bring?
Is this something I have to make, or is it something that I could just bring?
Oh, it's something you have to make. All right, yes.
It's something I have to make.
You gotta make us.
Um.
And they could tell if you bought it. Don't be slick.
Well, it's hot. So I would probably make like um. I don't know. I like to cook, man. So I mean, if it's
Oh,
just
you
us and we're
do?
just
Hey, that's awesome.
chilling, yeah. If it's just us and we're, I don't know. Like it's not like a big thing, I guess. I mean, I wouldn't.
It's not a big thing. It's just if it's
Well,
setting thing,
I don't
everybody's
know
cozy.
if it's relaxed. It's weird. I have a bunch of different things that I like to that are go tos.
Okay.
I wouldn't cook any like high endy stuff if we're just kind of like chilling. You
Casual.
know what I
Yep.
mean? Honestly, one of my all-time favorite things to eat, and as terrible as someone who likes to work out, is I love hot dogs and beans. I don't know if I would bring it to the White House, but I love it as like my go-to.
All right,
Um,
but look, it can't be any hot dog. All right,
yeah.
let's just put that out there
All
because
right. If
there
I
are
was gonna cook something for
differences
him,
with hot
and
dogs.
if the Obamas were like, "Yo, we're gonna have Mike Tony pull through, make some food," and I'm like, "Okay, the Obamas is coming through," I would probably make like I love like making racks of lamb because I can experiment with the
Oh,
sauces with it. So like because it goes really well with fruits. So I
oh
mean I experiment
snap!
with like a fruit
Okay,
sauce or something like that. But like if I could bring
wow.
something that
Okay,
couldn't make, I love curry goat and white rice. My family cooks it really well, but I haven't really learned to cook it from my aunts like that. So I
okay.
would bring that if it was just like kind of if I could cook that, that would be the first. That was the first thing that came to mind. But I can't. I haven't
Okay,
learned how to cook it
if you
yet.
could cook that, but you could cook lamb. You said lamb.
Yeah. So I mean, but that's something I looked it up a long time ago, and it became something I got very interested in because I love watching cooking. So that was just that was something I looked up a long
Yeah.
time ago and liked cooking and stuff like that. It's not very hard, particularly, but when you start
Sure.
experimenting with stuff, it's kind of, you can find.
But let me remember that about having lamb and fruit. See, when I think of lamb, I think of the mint jelly.
Mm,
That's just like I'm like, oh gosh, I just love that combination. But
yeah,
I'll remember that as far as the fruit is concerned. Okay,
yeah.
cool. Thank you for your feedback as we learn a little bit more about how you think. And we're going to close it out in a second here. But do you have another artist in mind that you perhaps would either like to see interviewed or you would like to give a shout out to?
Oh God. All right. Yeah.
That's
There's
fine.
some. Okay. Cool. You already interviewed Nicholas Draper Ivy. I saw that. I like his work.
Yes.
Is great. He's a really talented artist. So his work is really good.
Yes.
Um, yeah. I mean, there's my boy Cameron Knight, C Knight Comics. He's a super talented
Yes.
artist. He's
Yes.
amazing. I love to see his stuff. If you interview him, he's a really great dude. He is a solid individual. You have End of Days on Mars, Philip. He's really dope.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Phenomenal
Yes.
artist. I mean, his storytelling abilities too is on point. You have Metallica Lux Nova or
Right.
Metallica now. He also works with
Why do
Season
I feel
Noir, and
always
he's super
feel?
talented. You know, what's funny is that that black sphere is only so big. And then what's your name? Oh boy, him. Um, yeah, there's just a ton of all of my boy Fresh ones. Yeah, so these are people that I kind of talk with pretty regularly. But you know, I love
Oh,
seeing their
nice.
work. I love seeing their work ethic. They post regularly. They really care about growing in their craft. My boy Fresh ones just hit 10K not too long ago. Well deserved, and you know, he's just
Oh,
a
beautiful.
solid kind of artist or whatever.
I think
But
I follow Fresh Ones,
Fresh
but
ones, yeah.
I'm very familiar. Yeah, I'll have to type
But
that in.
they're all really good people. Oh, and Silrance. I actually have his book here. Love Sucks for These Losers. Yo, I love this book. This book
Can you
right here. I love this book.
DM me that
Yeah,
artist that you just mentioned? Because
yeah.
I'm not familiar. I don't think I am.
Silrance. Yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
reminded me of being back in middle school and all the wild stuff I used to do, and then it was turned into this awesome manga. I don't know why this dude hasn't just blown up yet. I
Oh my
mean, like his work
goodness.
is phenomenal. So I love that book.
In time, I'm sure.
Yep.
But yeah, if you could just send me a message with his information too. He's just one person on the roster that you just called off that I don't know. So I'm definitely interested in that for sure.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So thank you so much. I can't thank you enough, Mr. Mike Tony. I don't know why I want to say Mr. Mike Tony. It just feels appropriate. I'm like, I have to add the Mr. to it. So thank you once again. Thank you, everyone, all the viewers who have joined us and who have actually, been kicking it out for this whole live. So we definitely appreciate that. RTA stands for Respect the Artist. And again, if you're just browsing through, make sure that you follow me at DreamAloud Art. Hit the link in my bio so you can subscribe to be notified when the full interview is available on YouTube. Make sure you follow Mike Tony Design and track him, follow him, support him. Yo, get that book. I'm getting that, and I'm going to be so excited. It's like Christmas every time I get something in the mail for an artist that I support, and I'm just like, yeah, this is great. So thank you once again, Mike Tony, and I'm going to sign off from this end, okay?
Thanks for having me.
All
Appreciate
right,
it.
we'll be in touch.
See you
Take
guys.
care. All right, y'all. So that was the incredible Mike Tony Design. Oh man, what an interview. I feel so energized. I feel like inhale, exhale on it. So, and thanks for kicking it out with us for this interview. And again, hit the link in my bio, subscribe on YouTube, be notified. Subscribe to be notified. All right. RTA stands for Respect the Artist. You already know. Dream Aloud. Peace, peace from here to the Far East. Love y'all.